To hands, how many of you have heard of PwC before? Wow, all right, that's actually way better than I thought. Can somebody shout out what we do?
Auditing.
Auditing, that's right. What else? There's one other core thing we're known for. Yeah.
Accounting?
That's right. Tax and assurance is what we're known for. So we're going to hopefully change that misconception a little bit today, because PwC is actually known for a lot more than just that. And it's interesting, when we come here to campus, one of the biggest challenges we have is raising that brand recognition. So our three primary lines of service are your typical, your tax, or your accounting, your audit, what we call assurance, and then we have our advisory practice, which is our core consulting business. Within that is cybersecurity, which obviously you guys are all here today to talk about. So you can imagine when we go to the business career fair, we get plagued by all of the tax, and I don't even know what other majors want to talk to us, but the line is huge, and we have to turn them away because we're hiring for cybersecurity. And we have the opposite problem at the engineering career fair, because they stick us next to Lockheed Martin and IBM, and none of the engineers want to come work for PwC. So hopefully we can raise the awareness a little bit today about the cybersecurity practice within PwC, and hopefully get you guys a little bit interested in what we're going to talk about. So I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is Ben and Brian have an awesome talk for you guys today and a technical demo to follow. I think it should be pretty cool. The bad news is you have to get through like 15 slides with me before you get to see it. So I can talk about everything else we do. How do you work this thing? All right, so the four of us are all within PwC's cybersecurity practice. So on the end we have Sue Yin, Brian, Ben, and then I'm Ian. So we've all been with the firm for varying time periods, anywhere from 1 to 4 years. The three of us here, three guys, are from Minneapolis, and then Sue Yin is from our Chicago office. So we're technically a network of international firms. We actually have one of our new hires just joined. And he's going to Tokyo for 2 years. But we do have a heavy national presence as well. This guy over here, he's going down to Dallas next year. He, fortunately, just accepted his full-time offer. So he'll be starting with the firm soon. A little bit about PwC. So our cybersecurity practice in total is approximately, I don't know the overall headcount, but advisory is about 30,000 strong. 10,000 strong within the U.S. We have a larger global presence. PwC as a whole is, I think, more around 170,000 or so. You'll see here, leading the industry in technology by going Google. So how many of you are familiar with Lotus Notes? Okay. So those 5 or 6 hands will understand how embarrassing it is going to clients and they see you open your laptop with Lotus Notes still on. So up until this past year, we were the second largest customer for Lotus Notes, followed by IBM. So that was terrible. So this year we just went Google. We switched over to Google for all of our technology suites. So our office products, email, calendar, everything. So that's been a huge success. We rank top 10 on a ton of different, all your surveys. One thing that I will point out here, a lot of this, guys, I'm not going to lie, a lot of this is fluff. The one thing that I will point out that I don't think is BS is that number 3 on Diversity Inc.'s 2015 Companies for Diversity. PwC seriously takes diversity to heart. You'll see later there's 5 core dimensions of what we call the PwC professional. Basically 5 attributes that we think our professional should have, and our global acumen or our diversity or inclusion is one of those 5 core principles. So we do take that very seriously. Moving on, I'm going to breeze through these pretty quick because I think you guys want to get to the core of the presentation. So, redefining consulting, reinvest consulting to create a category of 1. So PwC does a lot, as you guys can probably imagine. So our advisory services, if you can name a problem that a business might have, PwC likely has the talent to help that business solve their problem. If not, we're likely working on a merger or an acquisition to solve that problem for them. We operate globally. One of our huge value adds and competitive advantages is that we have practitioners all over the world. So for your major Fortune 500 companies, those with the global presence, that's important to them. We don't have to fly practitioners from the U.S. to Belgium or to Tokyo or to Hong Kong because we already have practices established in those regions. and then delivering strategy through execution. So this is Strategy Ann's plug. We just acquired Booz, so we're doing a lot more in strategy. What that means is that you not only get on the forefront of this project, so you develop the strategy of how a business is going to approach one of their problems, you go all the way through the execution of solving that problem for them, and that's where our consulting services come in. Our firm, your future. There's a couple of core spaces within our practice. Honestly, I'm not going to get too into how PwC is structured internally, because at this point you guys shouldn't really care. What you should take away from this presentation, aside from the cool technical demo later, is the variety of services that PwC does within their cybersecurity space, and then sort of aligning your interests with the work that we perform, and then identifying opportunities that you might want to pursue, whether it be internship or full-time offers. And then I will turn it over to Sue to talk about our framework.
Sure. So what we have up here is, as Ian mentioned, our framework, and this is what we have used to sort of guide how we embrace talent at PwC and how we help mold our different team members to become the best they can be to serve our clients. So there are 5 different dimensions that we focus on developing as PwC professionals. In the center you can see whole leadership, just rounding out our capabilities as leaders, and then we also have focuses on relationships, business acumen, global acumen, and technical capabilities. And if you want to go to the next slide, one of the ways that we help all of you as recent college grads sort of transition into becoming these PwC professionals is through the Advisory Academy. And this is a group that focuses on our associates and experienced associates, which are people who have joined the firm and have only been with the firm for 1 to 3 years. And we really focus on areas of basically giving these people opportunities to network within the firm and develop their relationships and capabilities so that they will be successful throughout their career at PwC. So, in summary, we encourage you to think about joining PwC. We've got a lot of great career opportunities. By joining PwC, you'll be able to work on really important client issues and face challenges that will vary from client engagement to client engagement. It will never be boring, and you'll always continue to grow as a professional. So to wrap up this whole beginning part, we just have some logistics to share with you around how you can apply to PwC if you are interested. So starting on October 4th is when our resume submissions will be closed. So if you're interested, you can start to submit your resumes now. You can apply by horizontal, so all of you are here. We are assuming because you're interested in cybersecurity and privacy. But if you have friends out there that are interested in other areas, we are also hiring in management consulting and technology consulting. The first round interviews on campus here at ISU will be on October 14th, and there will be 2 interviews that are back-to-back interviews in person that are 30 minutes long, and those will be behavioral interviews. If you make it past the first round, our final round interviews will actually be held in person at one of our PwC offices, and those will be on October 22nd and 23rd, and those will be focused more on those dimensions that we saw earlier around whole leadership, technical capabilities, global acumen, and so forth. So, if you are interested, you can submit your application either via the ISU Schools electronic system or on the PwC website. And we also have our ISU recruiter that's focused on ISU at PwC. Her name is Jennifer Pittman, and you can feel free to email her. Her email address is up there. Are we going to be sharing this after, or should they write her email address down now?
We can do either. Also, we have business cards down here, so if you guys do need to get a hold of somebody, feel free to take my card, reach out, and I can get you pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, great.
Yep. So, out of curiosity, has anybody already applied for either an internship or full-time offer? Okay. So, if anybody is seriously considering it, feel free to stop by after this talk, and we can chat, I guess, 1-on-4 a little bit, just to answer any questions you might have. All right, so on that note, I'll turn it over to Ben to kick off the technical talk.
Sure. So first, I'd just like to get a feel for the audience here. So how many of you are brand new freshmen at Iowa State? A few? Okay. What about upperclassmen, people that are looking for jobs? been doing security for a while? Okay, the other half, and I'm guessing the rest of you are in the middle then. How about MIS or in the business school? Are there any of those? Like one or two? Cool. That's where I'm from. And then computer E, big group, computer science, cool. Software E, I imagine, yeah. A few of them. Did I miss any?
Anybody we haven't called, because we
Anyone?
do have like political science, psych.
Yeah.
Software engineering.
Software, okay, yep, software, okay. Cool, cool. So this talk today is going to be, focusing on one particular attack vector that we do. So to give you a little bit of background on myself, Ben Moormeyer, I've been with the firm for about 2 years. I primarily focus on penetration testing. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight into what those engagements look like, and I guess a little bit more on kind of how we go about approaching those problems and getting our clients better and in a better security posture. So let's go ahead and start with why is there a security market? Why is PwC? Why do we care about security? And so every year PwC does a CEO survey where we survey over 1,000 or so CEOs in the U.S. And we collect statistics, and it shows that nearly 45% of U.S. CEOs say they're extremely concerned about cybersecurity. So that's really good for us. It's a lot of work for us to do. They also think it's a big part of a strategy item for them. And then on top of the CEO survey, we also do a survey specifically on cybercrime. And this is kind of why I'm bringing forth the topic of why we'll be looking at why users are the weak link moving forward here. And that's because 31% of respondents in our cybercrime survey say that phishing is an issue for them. So spear phishing, most of you guys are familiar with that, I assume. Malicious emails being sent, users clicking links, opening attachments, and so forth. This is a systemic problem across almost every industry. We see it. And so it's a common problem our clients have, and it's a real challenge to solve it. So here's kind of some historical trends as well. What we've seen is security being kind of siloed, not having the resources they need. Old threats have been really kind of one-off, individually motivated, and we're seeing a shift towards more nation-state attacks, greater collaboration amongst groups, more motivation, more funding. And then the necessity to move towards a more responsive security posture as an organization. That means expanding staff. Over the last 10 years, security has been growing tremendously. And so that's kind of the trends that we've been seeing. And it's becoming more of an all-around business problem. So you're having CEO and board buy-in as well. So where does PwC fit in all of this? So PwC helps its clients face this new reality of cybersecurity. So we perform, the following types of, offerings as part of our cybersecurity practice, and there's a few others that aren't listed here, but the primary ones are penetration testing, basically going in and simulating an attack on the company, and then we're going to be assessing their gaps and their exposures, and so that's kind of the main area that I focus on with the firm. We also have breach indicators and active cyber threat assessments. Ian's got a couple great stories about those, where we go in and we take a snapshot in time of our client's environment, and we're actively looking to see if there's any signs of a security breach. We do social engineering and phishing campaigns. This is also going to be a major component of the talk today. We'll actually launch several different scenarios at a time, designed to get users to click on them. We collect metrics. Sometimes we actually have malicious attachments, which we'll get into later on how they work, and we try to actually infiltrate their environment that way during a pen test. So additionally we have physical security, so that's can we gain access to the building, can we get into the data center, those sorts of assessments, those get brought into play. Operational technology and SCADA security. I spent some time this past summer doing testing at a coal mine, and the client was interested to see if we could get into their mining technology environment. So testing segmentation and different security aspects of those, legacy devices and devices that are actually controlling equipment. So that's kind of a unique area as well. We have a huge identity management practice, and that is mainly focused on managing user access and the identity itself and how it's propagated throughout the environment. So there's aspects of the strategy through the implementation of those.
It's also largely involved in development. For those of you that are involved in software engineering, software development, the identity and access management practice is also largely involved in implementing and customizing large software suites. Namely, PwC has a huge partnership with Oracle, and so we do a ton of Oracle OIM implementations and customizations. So really heavy in Java development in particular.
Yep. We also have, typical compliance readiness. So a lot of the work that we do, including, breach indicators, social engineering, penetration testing especially, is brought on in terms of compliance obligations from our clients. So they're trying to get ready for a compliance audit. And so as part of that, we'll be brought in to do different assessments. So Ian's done a fair amount of these compliance readiness assessments. And then as well as Ian touched on, we do strategy as well. So from the very high level standpoint of developing roadmaps for where firms should really kind of take their security department in the short term and in the long term. So we're going to go through a couple of engagement snapshots that will give you an idea of some of the projects that we've worked on in the past. So go ahead and kick this off here. I think Ian, you want to talk about this one?
Let's see, you might be the first one.
This might be mine.
Okay,
yeah.
so Ian's got this.
Okay, so as Ben mentioned, I focus mostly on compliance readiness and security strategy type engagements. So this first example is one that I worked on earlier this year, and we were actually working at a client just outside of London, and they were in the automotive financing industry, and we were helping them sort of assess their capabilities around IT risk and controls. So their main issue, if you want to give it a click, Ben, I think we've got some fancy animations here. So their main issue at this client was that they had just recently separated all of their IT services from another company. And so they were kind of starting from scratch in all of their IT services. And that meant that they didn't have a team built up around IT risk and controls. They didn't have any experts in this area. So they really needed to build up their capabilities to make sure that they could ensure their company and data was safe. So what we did for them was we worked with them to conduct a maturity assessment around their IT risk and controls function. And we did this by comparing their current capabilities to industry standards based on frameworks like ISO or COBIT. And by doing this, we were able to really understand their current maturity and help them understand where their gaps were. And we then developed a roadmap to help them address those gaps and make sure that they were going to be addressing their company's risks and enabling them to operate as a business safely and securely. So that's the first example.
What is this?
VR.
VR. All right, this is the boring one. All right, assisted international retailers. So you guys are going to see a theme. A lot of these are from one of our major retail clients. So each one is going to vaguely say international retailer, but we assisted them in developing and growing a disaster recovery program. So the company's leadership decided that DR must be a priority. However, there was no existing team or subject matter expertise. So this is seriously concerning, especially given that this company does billions and billions and billions in revenue and has a huge online presence. They also had one centrally located data center. So you can imagine when you're worrying about uptime and keeping that website up to date and keeping it online and available for its customers, if you have a Boeing 747 fly into that building, are your servers going to stay up or not? Because some of our clients will engineer and architect, this is another group, the infrastructure group, one of the considerations is terrorist attacks. So if somebody has a car bomb, how do you prevent a car with a bomb in it from getting through the gates? It can take a Boeing 747. If an F5 tornado comes through, will it stay on the ground? So that's pretty interesting. But we're able to develop requirements, set for all internal systems, and build a dedicated disaster recovery team. We also assisted the client in making hiring decisions as well as direct the program's growth over the course of several years. So obviously, you can't just stand up a world-class program in the course of 3 to 6 months, like our common engagements. But over the course of years, we were to build out a roadmap and take a phased approach to helping them build a very mature, world-class DR program. Impact, as a result, our client was able to meet the industry best practice standards as it relates to DR. While implementing such solutions such as blah, 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 we were able to build in efficiencies or reduce resource requirements on the client team. Basically, all that's saying is we can leverage a lot of our other capabilities. So PwC having a breadth of services, a breadth of experience, we're able to pull in those other teams and create synergies to make things more efficient and then add additional value to the client. All right, on to the cool stuff. This is an international retailer. And it's okay, so you guys can take international retailer, just draw a blank there. We do this across pretty much every industry. So whether it's utilities, I'm really heavily involved in healthcare. We do government contractors, defense contractors. We do agriculture even. But in discovering, responding to, and recovering from a cyber security breach. So I've done a lot in breach response. One of the more interesting things, our breach response projects are all under special code names. That's to protect the company's identity, even internally. So when I refer to one of my forensic projects, even to Ben, Brian, or Sue Yin, I'll refer to it as the code name. Internally at the client, if there's anybody that's not already signed, like the non-disclosure agreements within the client, we still refer to that client name as the code name. So I'll be writing emails to the client, and the subject will be Project Black Diamond, or Project Iron, or something like that. We had Project Badger, Project Cranberry, I want to do Project Gains. We had a fitness company. I wanted to do Project Gains, but it got denied. Anyway, so this one was interesting. They were informed by various three-letter agencies that they should probably check out some of the data leaving their environment. They were basically informed that approximately 400,000 credit cards had left their environment. So the first thing we found out about this company, they thought they weren't accepting credit cards. So that's a big red flag. You have 400,000 credit cards leaving the environment, and you don't think you accept credit cards. So they got on the phone with their lawyers. Their legal team recommended PwC as one of the people that could help them. While our partners were on that call, they booked 20 refundable flights out to that client, and they had boots on the ground that night. Started doing our initial investigation. I can't give you guys too many details because you can actually read about this in the news. But it was determined that the threat actor that had infiltrated this network and exfiltrated 400,000 credit cards was an Iranian organized crime group. So we come in, we do our investigation. As part of that, and the reason that myself and my team was brought in, is to do the vulnerability assessment. So basically understanding what can we do proactively to identify some of the vulnerabilities in the environment, how to get those closed, and that also helps us recreate a little bit what the attackers might have done. So we're doing the forensics, and then in parallel, we're doing my work stream, which is identifying vulnerabilities and helping with remediation. During my work stream, we had a web server. If you guys are familiar with the HTTP put method, it allows you to basically upload a file. So you can enable that anonymously. So you can have unauthorized files uploaded via the put method. So one of the things that we do in a pen test is we take that and we upload a web shell. A web shell, if that web server has ASP, or if it has PHP enabled, or a similar server-side language, you can actually emulate a command shell through your web browser. So you can issue commands, so you can do ipconfig or whatever you're into. But we uploaded that, we started looking through the directory of that web server, and we noticed very similar file names. We see cmd.php, webcmd.php. That's weird, like why would there be web shells? So we look at those files. They were all Chinese encoded. Like, well, that's weird. An American-based company, why do they have Chinese encoded web shells on their web server? And the light goes off. Well, shit, we're probably not the first ones here. So we were there investigating an Iranian hack. Through our operational security, looking for vulnerabilities, we identify a Chinese encoded web shell. We contact the senior security director of the client. Their CISO gets on the phone, and he tells us, oh, don't worry about it. The Chinese have been in there since 2008. So that company, I'm telling you, this is not the international retailer. That one was a similar one where we were doing a pen test. We identified, you guys are familiar with Cold Fusion, very similar exploit. Where Cold Fusion, if you can bypass the administrative login, there's a lot of different ways in older versions of Cold Fusion to bypass authentication. And what you can do is you can schedule a task, upload your own little applet, and then that enables you to get remote command access, run commands. Again, we noticed there was already a task scheduled, and it was me and one other guy in the lab while we were pen testing. He wasn't even on my project. And I'm reading through the log events, and I see a file uploaded. And it was called super2.cfm. CFM is the file extension for Cold Fusion scripts. And he's like, what the F did you just say? I was like, super2.cfm? He goes, oh shit. He had just been on a breach response project 6 months prior that was the attack vector and the very specific cold fusion script that was used to gain a foothold in one of our other clients. So based on his breach response experience, he's able to identify that as basically the entry point of this breach, and we spun up a whole forensic project around that one script and that one exploit. So that was a really, really long-winded explanation for the snapshot. All right, it's just the overall security posture of a blank organization. So we do a lot of what we just call generic security assessments. One that I'll leave you with, we do something that's pretty cool. It's called threat modeling assessment. So basically, we take all the various layers of security. So you have your endpoint security, you have the perimeter, you have the network, application, the data layer, all your layers of security. We have all the different vectors on this huge diagram that could possibly, be a vector for an attack. And we basically walk the client through what are your controls, what are your defenses for every step of this process. And then we go through, and at the end, we do what we call defense effectiveness. So we had one large, it was actually the financial side for a large German car manufacturer, which is awesome. So when you go to Germany and you go to their offices, they have one of their really, really high-end models on the floor spinning in front of the office. So that's cool. So we went there, we did the threat modeling, and they determined that their absolute strongest defense was the physical. So their security guards are all ex-Navy SEALs, ex-SWAT, they all bench 600, which is hilarious because they all drive around in little smart cars. I'm probably giving that a decline, which is unfortunate, but it's ridiculous seeing these 500-pound guys cramming in these little cars and driving along the parking lot. And then when you hear them honk the sissy horn, it's hilarious. So these guys drive around, that's their security. So they were boasting, there's no way anybody's going to get in. So we ended up doing, as part of our defense effectiveness, we did a physical pen test there. And they were so confident that nobody would get in. We basically had one contact, it was the security manager for that client. And we had meetings scheduled that morning. We thought since we'd already be in town, it'd be a great opportunity to execute the physical pen test. So we ended up making our way all the way to the building, all the way to the conference room where our meeting was scheduled, and we called her 15 minutes before the meeting, let her know that we were there. She's like, oh great, I'll come down to the front desk and get you guys. But oh no, don't worry, we're already plugged in the conference room. So that was that's exactly how this exercise is designed. The client identifies their own strengths and weaknesses, and then you go and validate those controls, for better or for worse. Because we have a lot of clients that say, we do this terrible. And then through the execution of that defense effectiveness, you realize it's actually not nearly as bad as you thought. You have a lot of great controls in place. And then unfortunately, the opposite. And then, yep.
Okay, so first off, we'll kind of get into the main talk here. What do you guys think the weakest link in the grand security chain is? We're talking the whole front and whole organization. Anyone, any thoughts? People, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Users. So users are the weakest link, and this is truly because there's human nature at stake here. They can always be fooled, right? So we take this to heart with a lot of our engagements where we get brought in to do social engineering and pen testing, where we can work in a social engineering component or a phishing scheme involved with that. You can't program a human to not click on links. You have to train them. So that's kind of the tough piece here. And the other reason humans are often targeted is because they're high value, right? There's people that have access to the sensitive data. So if I can gain access to a high value target like a CEO and steal all the corporate financial information, that's a pretty valuable target in my mind. So we'll kind of walk you through the different steps we take in doing one of these social engineering engagements. And then we'll actually do a quick demo that kind of outlines some of these techniques and tactics as well. So for our approach here, we kind of follow a distinctive attack path, so to say. So we're looking at, to provide more value, we want to actually conduct the most realistic scenario as possible. And we're finding these days that the advanced attackers are still getting in through spear phishing attacks. They're not trying to find exploits in firewalls or 0 days in webcams. Actually, they are. But it's a lot easier most of the time to attack a person than it is a physical device or a security appliance. they're also evading antivirus and other detection mechanisms. So we take that into account during our assessments. We use special techniques to evade detection throughout our penetration tests. We actually will write up as a strength if our clients do detect our presence when we're doing an internal or external penetration test. The second is we want to move laterally throughout the environment after we have established our internal foothold. And we try to do that as stealthy as possible. And then lastly, we try to exfiltrate junk data at the end of gaining the highest level of access we were able to simulate. Are they able to catch if an adversary was able to successfully export data. And kind of the steps we walk through here are the recon phase, where we're going through information gathering on key individuals. This is where you're identifying your targets, your key weaknesses that you see in the client or in the company that we're trying to attack. And the second phase is the intrusion phase, and that's the physically launching the attack, doing the exploitation, moving throughout the environment. And then we move that into the exfiltration phase, where we're pulling junk data out. I say junk data, we never send actual client data out of their network, but we simulate that as close as we can to the real thing. And then our last stage is reporting. To provide value to our clients, we write up a big report that says, these are all of our findings. Here's the business impact related to those, so they can get better. So let's take a second here and kind of get into the attacker mindset. Now, most attackers, they don't want to waste time. They have a lot of time already, but they're going to take the path of least resistance. And this is how we typically approach our penetration tests as well. We're not out there to find every single vulnerability in the client environment in these short engagements. They last between 2 to 4 weeks. So there's just not enough time at a large client to find every single vulnerability. So we're going to take the path of least resistance all the way to get to sensitive data and pull it out. So let's start here with the initial recon. So this is kind of my scenario here that we'll walk through. So we discover a new company initiative on their website, and we think, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they're going on a hiring boom. They're hiring a lot more people. And, oh, we also found some internal email addresses that were disclosed.
How many people know about this inside the company, and do they give you any inside information?
So this absolutely depends on the engagement. That's a great question. So on what I would call, quote unquote, like a red team style engagement, it might be just their chief information security officer and maybe his right-hand manager that could push down some of the notifications when their security operations potentially catches something or notices something's going wrong. So that would be, at a minimum, I would say 1 to 2 people would know, especially for our physical and targeted spear phishing engagements. It's very few people will know. So we're really trying to simulate what would actually happen. On our traditional PCI-related internal and external pen tests, there might be a few additional people added to that list from their security department.
Yeah, I just add to that. That's a great question. So one of the reasons we like to keep it as a black box as humanly possible, we don't want a ton of awareness around our activities. The reason being is if you don't alert the people that are responsible for security monitoring and incident response, you can gauge their natural reactions to security events and incidents, and allows us to measure that. Are you following the procedure you're supposed to? Was it effective? Did you identify our activity in a timely manner? And then we can include that in the report. That's a huge value add to the client at literally no extra cost to us. So that's why we typically recommend it. Yeah, great question.
Great question. So I got a question for you guys then. So how would you conduct recon against a company? What kind of activities would you perform? Any hands for that? What sorts of things do we care about? Go ahead.
I check the website and check the building.
Yep. Check.
See.
Canvass the building, check their website, see what they have. What else? If you're looking, target high up individuals or
Apply for a job at the place.
apply for a job, that's very sneaky. Yeah, that's a good one.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, that's huge.
Hell yeah.
I'm glad someone brought that up. We use LinkedIn like crazy to get information about employees at our clients. So that's good. That's good, guys. All right, target. So now we got our target. We found their LinkedIn. We got their internal email address. We know they're on a hiring boom, and so we're going to apply for a job. with a spear phishing email. And we're going to make this email look like, how about a resume, you know? Send them our resume. It's going to be in Word doc format, though. And so it contains a malicious macro. Are you guys all familiar with macros and how they kind of operate? They're typically disabled by default, and so I'll kind of preface that a little bit. We like using macros in our social engineering engagements because they're easy, and we'll kind of get into that a bit later when I talk about the payloads themselves. But just play along with this for right now. So we're going to send them a malicious resume, and this is going to give us our foothold in the environment. We're going to assume someone in HR isn't very security aware. Okay, the company's not doing their proper due diligence and security awareness training. So they're going to click open that resume, and it's going to run our macro, and that's actually going to open a reverse shell and call back to our attack box that's hosted on the internet. So now we actually have a foothold on their internal environment. So what do we do from here is, you know, we're on the internal environment acting as that HR person that opened our document, and we're going to try to escalate privileges on that machine. We're going to try to take complete control over that person's workstation and move throughout the environment. So what sorts of access, you know, besides obtaining, you know, full level privileges on the machine, are we really interested in, and what's going to allow us to kind of gain more access when we just have, let's say, a normal user account? What types of things are useful to attackers? Anyone?
Usernames and passwords.
Usernames and passwords, that's great.
Cookies.
What's that?
Cookies.
Cookies? Yep, cookies is good.
Browser history. even.
Browser history,
Yeah,
yep.
you can see what apps they've been visiting.
Hashes on a Windows environment.
Yep, hashes is a big one. We're going to get into that as well. Anything else?
Email good.
Email? Yeah.
Email's awesome.
Very good. There's all kinds of goodies in email. The other thing I'd mention is, you know, basic read-write access on shares, right? So what kind of shares do they have access to? What can I find on there? Right?
There's always password lists.
Clear text
Always
passwords, yeah, whatever you can find on user shares. We comb through it once we have our internal foothold. So after we've compromised completely that one machine, we've escalated privileges to full system, we're going to assume we have at least local administrator credentials or the local administrator hash. And what we're going to do from there is we're going to actually try that on other machines in the environment. This is called pivoting or lateral movement. So we're actually going to see if those credentials work anywhere else. And if we're lucky, they'll have shared local admin, which means that password will actually have administrator credentials on another machine, which means we can do what I like to call rinse and repeat. So we'll essentially go through the same process we did on the first machine to actually get more credentials on the next. And we keep doing this over and over again. And so what do you think we're looking for in terms of users if we're able to just keep dumping credentials off of these machines? What types of accounts are we interested in? Back there.
Eventually gonna get domain admin.
Absolutely. That's obviously what we're after. But is there any others that, because at the end of the day, we don't necessarily care about domain admin as much. We care about getting at that sensitive data. So
I care about domain admin.
yeah, domain admin's always fun. We play some gangster rap after, you know.
Yep.
We owned them. That
DA
kind of
by lunch.
Yep, exactly. DA by lunch. So, but really though, what other types of users are equally as good in terms of demonstrating the impact of a breach? Any other that come to mind?
Or as you mentioned, anyone that would be able to directly access the
Absolutely.
information you need.
So we're talking people in the IT department, probably, database administrators. That's a really good
People that flat out type in the information, like
Yep.
it's a bank,
tellers, maybe even.
but, yeah.
Great, that's all. So, but then I have here domain admin. So thanks for pointing that out. That's exactly what we're after.
That's the main one.
That's the main one.
Once you get domain admin, in theory, it's just a matter of time until
Matter
you
of time.
compromise everybody else. So that's kind of the keys.
Yep, and so with full system access on a machine, we're actually able to dump credentials out of memory. We use a few different tools for that. The main one's Cats. We have a few different ways of actually executing that so it doesn't get detected. Every antivirus under the sun trips on Mimikatz by default. So we have to go through a few extra steps to kind of evade that. But essentially, we're rinsing and repeating, dumping creds throughout the environment until we get DA. And then from after we have DA, then we're going after that data. And this is, so throughout this scenario, let's say, initially you had an HR personnel click and open a malicious document that appeared to be a harmless resume, and it ends up being that adversaries have directly accessed payment card information by the end of it. So that's what it can result to. And so,
Are there any questions so
Yeah.
far? I know we're making like some jumps because obviously we can't like speak to all
Yep.
the details in 30 minutes, but
any questions on that? Everyone good?
I'm just curious. How do you dump hashes without flagging AV?
So we'll get into that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
all
there's a couple
it
different.
should be noted that all of the techniques, literally that he just mentioned, are obviously all targeting Windows domains.
Yep.
We do test Unix, Linux. It's just not nearly as common. And I'm not even going to get into the debate Windows versus Unix, Linux. It's just a fact that most of the larger companies today use more Windows systems and use a Windows domain, especially for the users, than Unix, Linux. So
Yeah.
that's why most of these techniques are geared towards that platform.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with my, disclaimer here. Please, please, please do not attempt to do any of these actions against like the school or people you are not authorized to do so. That would be illegal. You don't want anyone here getting in trouble or going to jail for any of that stuff. So when PwC is brought in to do this, we have signed statements of work that give us direct authorization to perform this type of testing. It means we have express written permission to perform these activities under a contract. So that's something that you guys should take very seriously. By all means, research how this stuff works, get to know it. You can stand up your own lab environments and try this on stuff that you own, wholehearted, like you own, but do not try this on stuff that you are not expressly authorized to, or you'll get in big trouble. So we'll start with recon. Brought up LinkedIn. LinkedIn's huge. We find all kinds of stuff there. We also do a lot of Google hacking, right? So all kinds of different, crazy queries, find out information. The Harvester, which is pictured here, that's actually a built-in tool with Kali Linux. How many people in here are familiar with Kali? A good amount, good. So for those of you who don't know, Kali Linux is a specific Linux distribution designed for penetration testing. PwC's firm penetration testing image is Kali-based. So all of my penetration testing experience has been performed in Kali for the most part. We do use Windows on occasion, but for the vast majority of our work, we're using Kali. So this tool is built in, and what it does is essentially does a vast harvest, hence the name Harvester, over a variety of different open source entities like Google, Bing, PGP, so for email keys, your LinkedIn, Jigsaw, Twitter, all of that. So this is really good for finding email addresses that are disclosed openly on the internet. So this is one of those main tools. ReconNG is similar. It's more focused on the infrastructure, so to say, than people. Who is really good for looking up who owns different domains and different IP addresses, that sort of thing. And then Maltego is great for us, exploring the relationships between different entities. So let's talk about our scenario development. So we want to make a resume. This is I don't think this person would get a job probably. Their resume, but hey, it's a resume, and we're designing this to blend into something we already found in the company, right? So we know they're on a big hiring push, and so it doesn't have to be a resume, right? What if you have a big class coming up and someone knows about it and they decided to attack the students in the class? They send a fake course syllabus, maybe, or a resume like I have here. What if it isn't an attachment at all, and it's just a malicious website where you sign up for a raffle? Okay. So we've done that as well, where we'll just stand up, we'll buy a domain, we'll make it look really official, similar to the corporate website, and it'll have client-side exploits on there. And then I guess here as well, if you're doing what some people would call whaling or big spear fishing, you're going after a major executive, maybe looking at executive document reviews. So like, here's our quarterly report, can you take a look at it, that sort of thing. Money transfers. This has been in the news lately. How many of you have heard about any of these money transfer frauds that have gone on? A few people, Steph? Okay, great. So what we're seeing here is that these spear phishing emails are targeting controllers, so people that have direct access over company funds, and they're essentially defrauded into wiring money to an entity, and it's supposedly like it's coming from the CFO of the company, and so it's like, wire this money right now, and what do? They wire it right away without asking questions, and then they're out, $40 million, stuff like that. So that's another typical thing that we see. So we'll move on here into actually creating the payload. Why do we like Word docs?